Spinoza was not a determinist in the modern sense of the word, in the same way that he was not an atheist in the modern sense of the word. He was considered an atheist by the church and the state at the time of his life because there was the only definition of God and religion that was considered valid was that of the state, and that formed the basis of the argument that the Calvinists had that if a people were not Christian, then their land could be conquered because they were considered godless. But of course, we know that that was a tool of colonialism. Conquered people had religion, not that they should have needed that to have been considered fully human. But what I'm saying is that in the 1700s, saying someone was an atheist was the same as saying they don't believe in God the way that I believe in God, and therefore they are not human. That being said, now this term was not, I don't believe it was in use at the time. It definitely wasn't something he called himself, but many scholars have since argued that Spinoza was a pantheist. So, which works really well with many religions across the world. So in Spinoza's writing, in the reflection of this pantheist ideology, the idea is that God is all of nature. Nature is God. We're a part of nature, and therefore we have godliness within us too. This doesn't mean that we're egoless. It doesn't mean that we can do everything God can do, but it means that we have a spark of divinity within ourselves. That being said, Spinoza uses the words nature and God pretty much interchangeably. And nature I prefer because whether you today consider yourself an atheist or a theist, or I'm agnostic personally, whatever you consider yourself, we're talking, when I'm referencing Spinoza's work, it's nature with a capital N, and this refers to that we're talking about all of the natural universe, the whole of the natural world, in this sense that there is some divinity there. So when Spinoza says that we are bound by nature, he's saying that we operate within a natural world with rules and order. This makes perfect sense to me. The chemicals that make up our bodies, they tend to interact with each other in certain ways. We consider those rules and order, and that doesn't mean that we don't have free will, because we also have divine intelligence within ourselves, being of nature ourselves. So yeah, I'll be using the term nature rather than God moving forward. I hope that clarifies part of what is so wonderful about Spinoza's approach. And I think that why I wanted to go back to Spinoza is because this is kind of the beginning of what we consider modern science. And I think that when we understand how it was originally thought of in this way, then we see how the ideas of, so part of why Spinoza thought that everybody had the right to interpret scripture by themselves and to observe the natural world and draw their own conclusions about it, to use their intelligence as individuals, is based on this idea that we all have a little bit of divinity in ourselves because we're part of the divine, because we're part of nature and nature is part of us. So this is how the theological political forms the foundation of the concept of religious freedom and religious tolerance in the West. And it's very important. And so this tolerance moves over to modern science too. When I say, and you will hear me say, and you may have already heard me say, that anyone of any belief system can do science, even though science is not a part of all of those belief systems. And that is because of how it is rooted in this early Enlightenment philosophy, which Spinoza is the founder of, in this idea that we all have the capacity and right to direct our own intelligence. And in fact, he would argue, and did argue, that we are obligated to use our own mind independently